You know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it back there. Yeah, I got game, got in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it Turnpike Miles. Yeah, it's Google signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock. I be doing big things.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I am your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out last week's episode 195 with Soleil Marcotte. And on that episode, she came on to talk about how she became a teacher. She's currently a second grade teacher, and as well as having her own small arts and craft business. And we really dove into a lot of great stuff, especially with her being a teacher and what the current atmosphere is like with teaching. And there was just a lot of great stuff that you don't get to hear from a teacher's point of view all the time, because sometimes teachers don't want to speak out about their current situation and just the way a lot of teachers are dropping out of the industry. And it was just a really great insight into her mindset with teaching and helping children out. So if you guys want to check that episode, go to the carrollconnection.simplecast.com, also Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you like to watch your podcast, go to YouTube, search the Carroll Connection or at Jared M. Carroll, and it should pop up. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll, at the Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So that brings me to today's episode 196, bringing back a guest who appeared on episode 132, Billy G.
Come on, brother.
Welcome back.
I'm happy to be here, man. Closing in on 200.
Yeah, almost there. Hopefully, October, November. That's kind of the. Hopefully, no one cancels, but you know how that goes in the industry. But close. We're very close, and I'm very excited about it. 5 years. I was telling you about my secret project before the podcast started. Yep. And a lot of stuff has gone into that, and I kind of we were talking for a while, honestly, catch up on a bunch of stuff, but talking about that and kind of rejecting the job promotion and stuff like that to go into that. And we could probably get into that aspect and a little bit later in the podcast, but I want to catch up on what's happened since that last episode. Yeah. So it was episode 132, and that aired in February of 2023. So if you could kind of walk me through some of the stuff that you've been up to since that last episode.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I'll say this. You have brought this podcast so far, and to see how far you've come in interviewing people and the growth in yourself, I'm so amped to be back on the Carroll Connection podcast, because the way you ask questions, the way you dive into topics, seriously, I love the conversation topics, whether with me or with other people. So to be back on here, I can't wait to dive into this conversation and wherever it leads, because I know every single podcast you bring or when we talk, someone else listening or watching right now will get something out of it. So I'm blessed to be back on here. With where I've been, it's been a blast, man. Since I was last on your podcast, I've grown tremendously in myself, but I've been traveling more, speaking to different schools, speaking to different companies, and truly helping people. And if people go look at the last podcast we did, that's what I'm all about. I want to be able to help people grow themselves, dive into that self-improvement, that personal development area, but to grow themselves on every single level. And I've been able to do that now, whether it's coaching clients and helping people around the country, or, like I said, traveling to different audiences and helping people in groups or auditoriums, whatever it is. But to see massive amounts of people grow, I'm not giving myself, this isn't a pat on the back. This is just being used in the way I wanted to be used. Man, it's been a blast. I'm loving every single second of it. Just enjoying where life's going.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually really want to dive into, because I know you posted specifically about the Michigan State experience, that you went out there and were helping students and working with people out there. Kind of walk me through how that opportunity came to be, and then what it was like actually going out there and doing that.
For sure. Yeah, no, of course. So working with so many different speakers, trying to learn from each other, trying to grow, whether it's speakers coming to me, asking how to get more gigs or learning their stage presence, whatever it is, or me asking experienced speakers hey, how could I tweak this? How could I tweak this? You tend to grow your network and try and meet people as much as you can, as you would in podcasts, as anyone would in life, trying to make friendships, relationships. So going about my search for opportunities to help more students or help more people, it fell on my lap to like another speaker had to pass up the opportunity and it connected me with this conference that Michigan State was putting on called My Lead. Incredible conference trying to help, yes, college students, but also the Michigan high school students. And so what they did for this conference was mix together college students and the best sophomore high schoolers from across Detroit. And they picked 1 or 2 high schoolers from every single high school across Detroit and brought them to Michigan State. And they had different speakers come in, different workshop leaders and whatnot. And the blessing of that was they chose me. I hopped on a call with them, a Zoom call. They loved everything I was about. But on a 20, 30-minute Zoom call, you hear the speaker. You don't necessarily know what impact they're going to bring. You don't know what they're gonna talk about necessarily. They can go over points and bullet points and everything. So I get to Michigan State in I believe April. I get there for the first opportunity, and they give me a room, they give me a classroom, everything like that. It's probably about 30, 40 students in there, and like, hey Bill, you get an hour, go for it. And I had this place, the energy off the charts, all these kids raising their hands, asking questions, truly diving into what I've talked before about on your podcast, the mind. Because I wholeheartedly believe the mind is the greatest tool you've been given. I call it the universal tool because it can help you do anything, create anything, can answer any question you have if we know how to use it. So when going to talk to students, going to talk to youth, going to talk to whoever it is, you really realize that not many of us were taught how to use the mind we were supposed to. So to catch students at a younger age to really understand this, they understand their mental health, they understand their personal health, they understand their spiritual health, and they can grow all these areas. So to bring this to students that have never truly stepped into this opportunity where they hear about mental health and mindset, and a lot of us, we kind of connect that to, that's an area we have to focus on, but sometimes we connect that to a negative perspective, negative feeling about it. So to show them all these different areas where they can actually grow this and don't have to go to someone else, this is just like self-growth. These kids were roaring, they're raising their hands the entire time, they're connecting to it. Like, I never thought of it this way. I'm having them do work on papers throughout this workshop, and they loved it. But the conference leaders loved it just as much. So the next month they go, hey Bill, we're having round 2. Do you want to come in and speak again? I was like, of course. And I'm sitting there, I'm just taking these opportunities because, one, I want to create the impact. I could care less about the money. I just want to bring this and help people. So they bring me back in and they give me a bigger room this time. They bring more students in. And they gave me an hour. The funny thing is I went an hour and then the kids are given question time. I make sure that's the end of every single gig, no matter who I'm talking to. They had to pull me off stage because so many hands were raised. They needed another speaker to come on, and I was cutting into their time. But it showed the impact. It showed how many people wanted this, not just students, but the adults that were in the room too. Like, I never thought of it that way. And if I can shift people's perspectives with a gig like that, that's been my goal. Whether it's a YouTube video, a podcast, whatever it is, the goal is to help people elevate themselves and rise to a higher level in whatever their goals are in life and their goals in self-improvement, and to now get more opportunities since I last saw you. That's been my driving force since then. And just to see it come to fruition, it's only the tip of the iceberg. I see this growing exponentially more because that's what I'm driven for. But to have these little glimpses of what the future holds and enjoying the process, I can't wait. I'm loving every second of it.
That's honestly so amazing. And like seeing you post about that stuff, I'm like, wow, you're doing the things that you want to do, and right. And helping. And I think what you said right there is great with helping especially the students, like really tapping into their mind and using the tool that they're given.
Right.
And we don't teach that nowadays. And like a lot of the time, like you don't really develop it until later in life. And sometimes, unfortunately, when you've gone through trauma and you're starting to look for answers of like, how do I fix these problems in my life? And like, you don't know where to go. Some people, unfortunately, go down bad paths, and then sometimes people can change and go into books or religion or choose different things with different teachers. And one of the positive things is having students go this positive way, looking within themselves and doing a lot of, whether it's spiritual healing or mental healing, and knowing that they have the tools to be successful. And a lot of the time we're not teaching students, you have the tools, you have the knowledge, like you're a great worker, you're a hard worker, like encouraging them to be successful. And we don't always do that in society. And I can't think of too many teachers that I've had just in classrooms that would have that type of impact to help me with the mental stuff. Like we all had health classes and stuff, but imagine if we had actually like mental health classes.
Yeah.
Like we don't have things of that nature
Right.
where we're educating on whether we're getting into the roots of it, of like mental health, going into different like diagnoses and stuff, or even just like the everyday stuff on how to cope with like the loss of like a family member, or the struggle, even the loss of a pet. Like that's something that a lot of people, almost everyone can relate on, but like teaching basic life skills in terms of your mental health, we don't do that. So for someone like yourself to step in and get an opportunity like that, especially at that age with those kids, I can imagine the impact that you made on them is enormous.
Yeah.
It's like, if you could, without giving like too much of like your sauce, I guess I could say, was what kind of stuff was you think that had the most impact within your workshop? Like, I don't want you to give away your workshop.
No,
but like,
I'll speak. I'll dive into all of it.
but I can imagine there's certain things that were really thought provoking, obviously getting all the hands raised. But like,
right.
I'm interested to know if there was like a certain thing that was like really causing the students to be engaged.
Yeah, no, of course. I'll dive into the entire thing. I'll lead a workshop right now. I love it. But I'll say this, speaking to students and speaking to age, because no matter what age people listening to this or watching this are, it affects everyone. As you said, we aren't taught this at a young age. So regardless of what age people are hearing this right now, it does affect you. It causes you to shift your perspective. It causes you to kind of step back from your current circumstances. I think a lot of us tend at times to spend a lot of time in stress to where we feel this is life. I have to make sure everything is on point. I have to make sure nothing falls out of line. But when you live in that tension, you aren't really living life. You're just trying to control everything. So in my workshops, I have everyone take steps back to look at themselves. You can say, look in the mirror. You can say, look, just take an introspective look at yourself for sure. But to dive into the 3 areas that we have full control over. And I think I mentioned on the last podcast we did, no matter what, people listening right now, watching right now, the 3 areas you will forever have control over, no matter where your life goes, no matter who comes into your life, no matter what happens to you, are your thoughts, your words, and your actions. You have full control over your thoughts and where you choose to focus them and direct them. As much as that tends to send shivers up some people's spines because they don't feel they can direct your thoughts. Your words, you can build someone up, you can tear someone down based around your words. Death and life is found in the power of the tongue. That's a scripture. But when that's externally based, meaning I can say something incredible to you and you feel it. I can say something terrible to you and you feel it. What about the internal dialogue? What am I saying to myself on a daily basis? Does that play a role? So I have them dive deep into their words they say to themselves, and truly, can we shift that? And to really have people take a step back and realize on thoughts, what are the 3 thoughts that run through my mind on a daily basis? Do they serve me? Do they tear me down? And then we sit there and you identify those 3 thoughts, and then we take a step back, like, all right, what are the 3 thoughts you want to run through your mind? Now you're actively choosing what you want to focus on. And to bring that power to people on a thought level, wait a second, I can shift how I feel because your thoughts are related to your emotions. All right, well, if that's one area, and then we change the statements that run through your mind on a daily basis. What are the 3 statements that run through your mind on a daily basis? And they write it down. Like, all right, well, are they good for you? Are they bad for you? Are they indifferent? Like, what do you feel? And you find that a lot of people speak so negatively about themselves. Like, I can give my own examples. I can remember back in the day when I was going through a lot, whether it's family struggle, relationship struggle, work struggle, stress. We'll just say stress and tension. Looking back at how I used to speak to myself, because I was going through pain, I was so negative to me. I was hurting myself constantly. I was telling myself I was never good enough. I wasn't worthy to be with someone. I wasn't the one that could achieve or succeed at the job I was in, because we were taught at a young age to excel, which is phenomenal, but we were comparing ourselves to other people, to other experiences, to other achievements that someone else achieved. So we're sitting there and we're trying to look at ourselves through the lens of someone else. Well, if I look at Michael Jordan and I want to be the best basketball player in the world, and he is the best basketball player in the world, and his shot percentage is this, and my shot percentage is terrible. It's like he's got like 60%, I got 10%. Well, if that's my comparison and I'm trying to live up to him, I'm going to tear myself down because I'm not achieving that every single day. But now, if we take Michael Jordan out of the picture and we compare Billy to Billy, all right, well, right now, yeah, okay, you're hitting this much. Well, what if you continue it and you start to increase it, you get better and better? I'm no longer comparing myself to the ultimate goal that someone else achieved. I'm now me against me. At the end of the day, that's forever what it will be. So if we step into those statements that run through your mind and we realize that if they don't serve you, if you're tearing yourself down, we're going to cross them out right there and choose new statements that build you up. You can call it affirmations, you can call it I am statements, you can call it whatever you want. But when you start to take ownership of what you say to yourself, it changes the whole game. Because now, as much as your thoughts are operating at a greater level, greater energy, greater emotion, you feel it, your energy shifts, you start to see the world through a new perspective, but then you change the words that run through your mind. You're creating disciplines and routines to live at that level because your mind is constantly moving in a positive direction. You are moving in a positive direction at that point. So you go over those two areas, and then your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So I always explain to people, your thought, if you change one of these areas, as much as we talked to the last podcast, I know I said this, if you change one of these areas, you start to feel it. If you change two of these areas, you're going to start to see it. If you change three of these areas, get ready, your entire life is about to change because your thoughts and your words lead your actions. So if you start to shift the two into a positive area, you then start to take positive actions towards the areas you want to move forward in life. But your actions are based around the beliefs that you stand on. So the last question that I bring to every single audience is, what is a concrete foundational belief that you stand on? And ask yourself, does it still serve you? And I'm not talking people about looking at belief systems in the sense of God and the universe. I'm asking no, literally a belief you stand on. Because I could sit there and tell you that maybe growing up, I came from a very tough household. Maybe I came from a very traumatic background, and my belief about myself was that I was never going to be good enough because so-and-so said I would never be good enough. And because I was so young, that created an unconscious belief system that I now live from without even knowing it. Because your beliefs about the world grow from 0 to 7. And then more often than not, unless we look at them and shift them, no matter how old you are, from 7 years old onward, your belief and systems, your unconscious belief systems are set from 0 to 7. So if you went through a traumatic event and you don't take the time to look back and heal it, very often you're living from that area without realizing it. So in this moment, we tell people and guide them to go back and actively doing it, but thinking so much using your tool, you go backwards and realize all right, well, what do I believe about myself? What do I believe about the world? What beliefs do I stand on? And if my belief at one time could have been, I'm not good enough. And I look at that now and I'm like, well, I know I've achieved so much. I know I'm not that same person back then. I'm not that scared little kid that was going through that. This doesn't serve me anymore. So in that moment, you take a deeper perspective and you're like, I'm going to cross this out. But now we ask, what is a new foundational belief you want to live from? That could be, I achieve everything at the highest level. I love myself in such an incredible way that all this good comes to me. I am abundant. I am strong. I'm loving life and life loves me and I see the blessings come to me. Whatever people want to choose for that moment in themselves. It's not me telling them to believe this. It's them choosing this belief serves me. So to guide people through your thoughts, your words, and your actions, and to come to that final moment, you're bringing people and guiding them through this workshop to better themselves, and they stand on a higher ground. So it causes them to feel greater, to live at a higher energy. Connect even further, when you live at a higher energy, you can call it law of attraction, law of resonance, manifestation, whatever you want. You operate at a spiritual level where now life starts to bring in greater because you're thinking greater. Your tool is now directed to a greater place. So in these workshops, we guide students through it, we guide adults through it, and people receive the help they need because it's them giving themselves the help, and they're given a time period, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever they want, to literally focus on them, which improves every area. In a workplace standpoint, I spoke at a business conference on Tuesday, and it was a virtual one, but the amount of messages that were coming through that chat when I was talking is, oh my goodness, I needed this. This is incredible. And these are adults. These aren't students saying they need this. These are people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that are realizing that, oh my goodness, I never thought of this. It's because we live so externally. We're trying to get to the next goal. We're trying to get to the next job. We're trying to get to the next paycheck, whatever it is, that we aren't in the present moment. We aren't thinking internally. So no matter what result you create externally, it starts at an internal level. So if we improve the internal level, we then improve the external results. And that's manifestation. That's law of attraction. And you are constantly manifesting because your mind is the tool and it's always on. So why not use it? Why not use it the right way? And I'm seeing that across the ages, and that's what I want to bring to people because it's the deep intrinsic work. But what deep intrinsic means, why not step into that even at a minuscule level? And I've got coaching clients that come through and they aren't at that higher level to take it that whole way, but we can start in steps. We can start at number one. You know there's more to you. You have goals and your dreams. Who do you have to become to achieve those goals and dreams? Let's bridge the gap. Start here and make it here. And it's just the work, but I love it.
Yeah, I definitely remember us talking about the thoughts, the actions,
right?
in the words on last podcast. And I was like I was telling you before, I was watching it on my TV right before this, and I saw it to like the trifecta and like the thoughts and all that stuff. But it's so true though. Like until you fix the things that you say to yourself, you're going to be constantly going through that same type of process.
Exactly.
And if you're constantly saying I'm not worth this, or I'm going to be paycheck to paycheck, I'm struggling, I'm this, I'm that, like you're going to be those things. Like the things that you say to yourself manifest in real life. And you become them. The things you think about constantly, you become them. And there's nothing that you could say or that I could say that's going to change that. You have to be the one to change that.
Exactly.
Like we could be here, we can encourage that, we could bring light to that. But at the end of the day, you're the one thinking the thoughts. I can't tell you to think otherwise. Like you have free will over your mind to think your thoughts.
Exactly.
And that is like the hardest thing for a lot of people to realize is like they're their own worst enemy sometimes. Like you're keeping yourself trapped in this cycle of negativity and you're not going to achieve the results that you want because you're stuck in this cycle. So it's breaking that cycle of thought. Then it gets into what you said with the words. Like speaking it, constantly getting out there, pursuing that gets into the action part. And for me, I was telling you about my secret project. I kind of introduce it a little bit here and I'm not going to expose myself with it because I want to keep it the secret. But I think the talking point of like you're working towards something is when I would have guests on the podcast, I would constantly talk about it, constantly show it, and just give them pieces of it to show that I'm working on it. It's not even so much for them as much it is for me to be like, this is what I'm doing and forcing myself to talk about it. So people are aware of it. So then it's, I have to like achieve this. I talked about this. It's almost like I'm applying the pressure to myself in some way. For me, that kind of really does work, but I think it's important because I don't think I get to the copy that I showed you, what I had, without working that project and working every week and showing people like, this is what I'm working on now. It's like, I know realistically they're not going to hit me up like right after and be like, hey, are you done with your project? Are you working on your project? No, it's so much, it's for me. And I think that's an important thing to go to the words part where I'm speaking it. I'm constantly speaking, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to get this done. And then it goes into that last portion with the actions, which are so crucial to get anything done, is setting the plan and actually executing on your plan. And for a lot of people, they can drop a great plan. But when it comes to actually doing the thing, that's like one of the hardest things to do. And it's crazy because like it should almost be pretty easy because sometimes fixing your thoughts and speaking things into reality are tough. Like just doing something, like you're just physically doing it. But like when it's aligned with your higher purpose, your higher being, that's hard to do because it's like, it's scary. It's unknown territory because you don't know if the time you're putting into this thing is going to be worth it. Is it going to pay off? All those negative thoughts come into play and start to doubt yourself. So you teaching this to younger students, younger children is huge because it took me years to even figure out something remotely similar to these concepts and to introduce it at a young level, even when you're doing it in business settings with a lot of older people, they didn't hear about this. Like you go back in the day, they weren't talking about mental health. They weren't talking about the mind and stuff like that. Not in the context in which we're talking about it today and what we can accomplish where even we'll dive into the spiritual aspect on the podcast, but like even like the government coming out and giving out documents of like manifestation and these things are real.
It's true.
And we have all these different tests and documents to prove these things, but people are still skeptical and they don't want to trust their own mind and their own abilities to achieve.
It's true.
And it's like, it really does come back to who we are as people and you being the one to control your destiny. Like this podcast doesn't happen unless I do it.
It's true.
Like this is the Carroll Connection. I'm Jared Carroll. I have to do the podcast. Like this is on me.
For sure.
If I don't want to do it, no one's going to do this for me. So it goes back to that concept of like you being the driver of your own life. And a lot of people are scared to be the driver. They want to be in the passenger seat while someone takes them to point A, point B, point
Yeah.
C, and that's just an unhealthy way to approach life, in my opinion.
No, it's true though, and I give you full credit. That's 100% it. And even with your secret project and whatnot, I said it to you earlier before we even started recording. I give you so much credit because you did the steps necessary to discipline yourself to create it. I always tell everyone, I say it on my gigs, I say it on the YouTube channel all the time, we are creating the image of a creator. And that is across almost every single spiritual culture. That's not just Christianity. That's just not all these other ones. It's literally, we are creating the image of a creator. So if we are creating the image of a creator, that means we are meant to create. So how do we create? Using the tool, which is your mind. And if we can direct our mind through those areas that we just went over, people then take their power back. That's the goal of personal power. That's the goal of personal development. It's the goal of self-improvement. Everything is trying to help you create the life and goals that you choose for yourself. As you did with this podcast, you took action steps because that was the image in your mind to create this. And now you're seeing it came to fruition, but now you're building it because you got so disciplined and routine about it that now it's growing to higher levels. That's bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So if we look at that idea of creating the image of a creator and using the tools we just went over, your thoughts, your words, and your actions, we then realize, like, what is the dream I have for myself, or people listening, for watching right now? Ask yourself, what is your goal? What is your dream? And then you can go into deeper thoughts like, all right, well, what is hindering me from getting there? Well, what do I like about this? And you can ask those questions, but when it comes to taking action, look at it through the lens of everything is trying to help you create it, because you chose it. And when you take an action step, I think a lot of us we say our prayers, and which is phenomenal. I do the same thing, and we focus and we try and manifest, which is all phenomenal. We meditate, phenomenal. We journal, phenomenal. Those are all action steps we can take to align ourselves to the destiny that we have and the destiny that we choose and the dream that we choose. So, but I like to teach people, your dream was given to you because you were supposed to be the one to bring it into the world. I believe on a spiritual level, God, the universe, life is trying to help you become your highest self, your best self, who you came here to become. And until you start to look at it through that lens and you realize that there is more to you, there's bigger purpose to you in life. For people listening and watching right now, there's so much more to your life than what it is right now. And you might be the greatest person in the world. There's another level. There's a reason you came here, and it's constant growth. So if we look at the areas that we can grow in and how can I achieve this dream, goal, whatever it is, and then take action steps. When you pray for God to open a door, the reality we live in, the universe we live in, works through physical language. And I mean physical language is action steps. So you can manifest, you can speak into existence, you can think about it. Your action steps is you walking through the door you ask God to open for you. But your action step is literally through the door. It doesn't matter if you see it, take an action. So if someone right now listening wants to write a book, if someone wants to create a podcast, if someone wants to create a YouTube channel, if someone wants to bring what they feel in their heart they're meant to bring to the world. If it's a book, it starts with a page. It starts with an idea that you grab a pencil, you grab a piece of paper, and you write down your idea. Well, just because you did that, journaling, meditating, whatever it is, you're now becoming aligned to that reality that you chose, that dream that you chose, that was given to you. So when you become aligned with it and you start writing for whatever the idea is, your higher self, God, the universe, life will then start to speak to you. And that's why we have all these incredible books out in the world, because people acted on what that feeling, that purpose, that dream was. They took action on it by grabbing a pencil and writing it down. That's why there's so many great spiritual teachers out there that tell you to write down your goals and write down your dreams and literally write down the dates that you want to achieve them, because it sends a message out to the universe. But in those moments of writing, you're becoming aligned to that version of you that achieved it, bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So if we even take it now a step further back, I spoke on this in a couple weeks ago on my YouTube channel, and it got really deep. Multiversal aspects has become a very deep topic in the world, and which is great. It shows we're elevating as a consciousness, as a society, everything like that. But on an introspective look, I said in a very simplified way, if you think about every single dream that you have, goal that you have, vision that you have for yourself, that's a different reality to walk towards. And your action steps dictate if you walk through the door to get there. So if I sit there and I'm in a very low state and I think to myself, man, I'm never going to do this. I don't know. I should just go, and I become afraid of the dream I have, and I just go follow, I don't know, a safe job. And I stay at that safe job, and it's great. Everything's fine. But I never really stepped into the pressure and the self-love it takes to achieve the dream I was called to do. That's fine. I'm not going to tell anyone that's wrong. But if you follow that, your reality becomes that safe lifestyle. Totally fine. But there's another reality that you took all these action steps and now you achieved your dream. And if you take the action steps, you achieve the dream. So if we have a personal choice, because we are a spiritual being, to make choices on what action steps to take, and the universe and God want to help us every single step of the way. There is an unlimited, abundant amount of help ready when you take an action step to help you through that door. I mean that with the most passion in my words. When you take an action, if it is picking up the pencil and writing something down, or to literally go out there and do something, the amount of help that will get you through that door. And when I started to take steps in myself to achieve this that I've been doing and to achieve it even further on a higher level as I'm pursuing, I realized there was no more stress because I'm following what I said I wanted to achieve, and everything in the universe has helped me do it. And when you realize that your life is so much more than what we were once told because of the tool between your ears and everything, you're like, oh my goodness, I can achieve anything. A smile comes across your face and there's no more stress. It's just, all right, let's go for it. And then if a hurdle pops up, if something kind of directs your path or stops your path, trust it. And that's the biggest thing. Trust and have faith that you are on the path you're supposed to be on, and watch as God, the universe, life opens the doors for you because you're moving forward to where you're meant to be, because you know it's where you're supposed to be thanks to that dream that was put on your heart. And I just say it to everyone, trust and have faith that the dream that was on your heart right here, right now is meant to happen. Walk towards it and just see what happens.
Yeah, I'm very big on this where it's not happening to you, it's happening for you.
100%.
And it kind of builds into this spirituality talk that we're having here, where the things that we go through are helping you get you where you want to go.
Exactly.
And it's like we asked for these things in some sense.
Yes.
Whether it was here in prayer and manifestation, or if you even believe before we come here, whether we signed up for this.
Exactly.
It depends where you want to go into it. And for me, when I think about things that happen, that especially could be causing trauma or negative, there's a purpose behind it. Those feelings, those traumas take us to places where it allows for us to grow. It creates it puts you in the space where the emotions are so high and things are so intense where you're left with only a couple options, whether to go through it or sit in it. And some people even go to the third option where regress and just keep going backwards. And it really takes the person, the individual, to power through that and believe that these things are happening to align you with your higher self that we're talking about. And a lot of the things that we see on social media are starting to gear towards this and highlight the fact that we are raising the consciousness on this planet that we've talked about. And people are having discussions like this. Like, I wouldn't have thought to talk about like this even like 5 years ago before I was doing the podcast. Like, I was just starting to get into the space with, I mean, really it was like Joe Rogan talking about psychedelics. I don't know. Yeah, it wasn't like as like super like spiritually like guided conversations, but it was opening this door to like this new level of consciousness and conversation for me, where I'm seeing it online now, where people are talking about this stuff. And it's crazy to see that spirituality, whether it's like the actual religious side or different religions, or you get into like the universe or things of that nature, are being brought to the forefront. And for me, I've said this on multiple podcasts lately, that I feel like the thing that's missing in society is the structure and like the morals of what religion was teaching us. And I'm not saying it should be one religion over the other that teaches our society, but this connective nature that we kind of like want as humans, we're lacking. We have social media. We're the most connected civilization that's ever been, as far as we know. But why are we suffering so much with the fact of community, like loving our neighbors? Like, we see them as nuisances. We don't care what they're going through. We're more selfish. We're gearing towards like these like almost hedonistic like behaviors and like involving ourselves in things that are not serving this higher power. And I believe that a lot of that stems from the lack of religion, the lack of faith, the lack of spirituality, and connecting with our fellow people.
Yeah.
And like not checking on our neighbors when they need something. Like think about your own neighborhoods. Like how many times do you actually talk to your neighbors? Like do you even wave to your neighbors? Most people don't.
Yeah.
Like that's like the crazy thing is like even just a simple wave acknowledging them goes a long way in creating that community because they're being acknowledged as people. Like they exist, they live their own lives and we're ignoring them in our own day to day and looking at our phone and looking at the latest celebrity that did so-and-so did such thing. It's like, these people don't care about you. They might say it on their stream that they care about you. They care about the follow. They care about the view. They care about the donation, but they don't know you.
Yeah.
And the people in your life, your day-to-day life, whether it's your work, your church, your family, your local grocery store, those people see you on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis. Those are the people that you should be having the conversations with, engaging with them. And we're not doing that.
Right.
And this goes into this whole spiritual aspect that we're kind of been building on, which aligns us with our higher purpose, which aligns us with achieving the dreams that we want.
Exactly.
So like, I'm interested to know if you've had any shifts in your spirituality. I've heard you talk more and more, especially on the Low Gravity podcast. Shout out to those guys. Where you were really diving into this, this concept. And I feel like on the last podcast, we were talking a little bit more with like the church and stuff like that. But I really started to hear you talk more about like manifestation and like, just bring up the term spirituality. I know we did it on the last podcast too, but has that concept changed for you lately?
I'd say yes, it has. How can I describe this? I'll give this example that I probably gave on the Low Gravity podcast, and I've talked to people about this, and to me, it became the viewpoint of the world, how we're supposed to see the world, we'll say. How we're, as you just touched on, community, people itself are struggling to show love to each other when the only goal of life is to show love to another. It's the we are love itself. God is love. If God is in all of us, then love is the foundational point. But if we can't even say hello to someone walking by, stranger, neighbor, or friend, family member, whatever it is, well, what is that? Is that you operating out of fear, operating out of faith, operating out of love? Well, what is it? And a lot of us operate out of a fearful standpoint now, which connects to your point of not many of us operate from a spiritual level, religious level, cultural level, whatever it is. But I gave this example, I'll give the example. So when I was going to a church, they split us up in these groups, and I love this moment because it opened so many people's eyes. So when I go to a church, I'm sitting there, I'm there to hear the message. I want to connect. I want to hear God. I want to hear the word, everything like this. But I'm not attached to one perspective over the other. I'm wholehearted believer in Jesus Christ. No doubt in my mind. Oh my goodness. But I think when I start to study the scripture, I see how it was adjusted. And there's a historical, you can connect this back, 841 AD, Constantine asked to change, he asked for all the people to meet, and they picked and chose what scriptures to have in the Bible. And I was like, well, wait a second. Why? Jesus said X, Y, and Z. Why do we change it? And so then you can find the scriptures now that we're taking out of the Bible. And so I started to read those. I was like, all right, I'm intrigued. I want to know. I'm not attached to what they are. I'm not attached to what someone told me. I'm choosing that there is more here. And if we think that the only aspect of life is in four walls at a specific building, meaning a church, meaning temple, whatever it is, we're missing out on why we're here. And so I explained in this group setting that we were split up into, we were meant to, I love this. The pastor gave a message, but he played a video, and it was a teacher at a college. I forget which college it was, but it was a Christian college, and she took all of her students across the country. I believe it was India, but it was another country, obviously, where their spiritual beliefs were very different. And the goal of the field trip, the study abroad aspect, was for all of these students to experience other religions and cultures, stand strong in their own beliefs, but show unconditional love to the other. And I looked at that, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the greatest video ever, because that's showing that we're becoming open to other people. And so we watched this video. It was incredible. All these students, they'd sit in meditation, which they'd never done before because it's not really taught much in our culture here. Now it's becoming more, but at the time it wasn't. And so all of these students are getting new beliefs and new perspectives on life, and which is what we're supposed to do. And so if we're moving forward in these areas, that means you're growing in an unconditional love way, which again is the goal. It's why Jesus came here, to teach us that. Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself, meaning connecting all these dots. So we're talking about all this stuff, and one of the kids in our group raises his hand and goes, "I got a question for you guys." And he goes, I believe at the time his brother was studying a very different culture and was very rigid to the kid asking the question. And he goes, I don't understand, like, how can I get him to view my viewpoints of Christianity and everything like that? I go, all right, man. Well, are you saying that you don't show him the love because he doesn't like what you like? And he goes, no, I'm not saying that. Obviously, I love him, blah, blah. I was like, all right, man. But if you have to be open to his perspective so he can be open to yours. And if we want to connect back to manifestation, the energy you put out there is the energy you get back. So I said to him, what if rather than looking at the universe, spirituality, culture, whatever, through one lens, we shift it a little bit, where if I tell everyone right now, and I might have given this example to you in the past one, but I know I said it on the Low Gravity podcast. If we start to look at the universe, if we start to look at our religion that we follow as in one room in a house, and I look out that window in the room and I see the universe through that window, and then say we're going to label that room as Christianity, and then I walk out the room and I go to the next room. Well, that's Muslim. I walk out the room, I go to the next room. That's Catholicism. I walk out the room, I go to the next one. That's Hindu. And every time I look out a different window of these specific rooms, I get a different perspective of reality, of the universe, because I only see from that one room window. But then, what if I want to go outside the house and play outside one day, and I see the universe for all that it is? I see the universe for what God created it to be. No longer limited by the categories and belief systems of one culture, but for everyone loving together as we were meant to call to. And when I started to see that, and then I connected it to the scriptures that were taken out of the Bible, where Jesus literally said stuff like this, I go, this is more than what we were told. And that just became my belief, where I never will turn someone away from whatever the belief systems are. And when I sat there and started to see people through that lens, I think God just like gives you a thumbs up. Like, yes, that's what I meant. And that's and you start to move forward in that area. But I sat there and my whole beliefs changed, where I didn't want to be in a room anymore in this house, only seeing one little perspective of the universe through one window. I wanted to step outside the house, play outside, and realize, like, wow, everything. Oh, you live in a state of awe and awesome, where it's like, oh my goodness. And when that happened, my belief system shifted. But then I realized how powerful I was. Because if the universe is constantly trying to help you, if God's trying to help you, and then you have the tool between your ears, and you're no longer limited to the one room you only viewed life through, that one window, and you step outside like, oh my goodness, there's so much here. You unlimit yourself. You unlimit your mind to more. And I say that's a very big topic for people right now. So I tell you to take it in increments. And I know I just explained the whole thing. That's a lot, because that's going to, if there's a lot of people that hear that and they're like, oh man, well, that makes sense. And there's a lot of people that are so connected to their beliefs, which is totally fine for people listening right now. And you don't like it because it goes against what you were always told is right. And that's fine. But if we're going to show unconditional love to the world, what if someone else's perspective is different than yours? Do you point the finger at them and tell them they're wrong and you're right? Well, that person's going to turn off from what culture you want them to see. So you have to show them unconditional love. And if you show them unconditional love, they're more open to what you have to say, which means I looked at that. I'll say this and I'll pass back to you. I talked to the pastor one time, and I have always had this belief. There's a story in the Bible, the Tower of Babel, and it's an Old Testament story where it says that God left the people and they built a tower to heaven. because they want to get to heaven. They want to talk to God. And they built this tower. God came back, and he didn't like that they were there, because it was like the people became sinful. The people became doing all these wrong things. So he broke the tower. And what he did was I'm completely paraphrasing this. He spread the languages from the world around. I mean, he sent people around. And so people can connect it to the point of, that's why we have all these different languages, because back in the day, we all were connected together. But then I sat there and I let my mind kind of wander with that years ago. I brought the different pastors and asked different questions. And I was like, all right, well, if he sent people out and say at the time of this happening, we had a concrete belief of who God was and what what love was. And then when it split up because we became sinful, and then say it sent Hindu culture way out there, it sent Chinese culture way out there, it sent Christian culture way out here, it sent everything across the globe. And obviously people using their imagination, this standpoint. That means if that viewpoint of who God was fractured, that means that if I go to India to study a Hindu culture, they have something that I need to believe deeper in God. But because I grew up in a Christian culture, I have something they need to believe deeper in God. And that's bringing this definition of love back to its whole, rather than being fractured in that window standpoint, in that one room. So that's why when you step outside and see the universe for what it is, you're more open to what God wants to bring in. You allow more of the blessings God wants to bring in, but you see the world for what it was, which is through a loving lens, which is exactly what Jesus taught. And I sat there and go, oh my goodness. Like I would sit on these thoughts and ponder these thoughts and meditate on these thoughts and pray on these thoughts. And I started to see this line connecting. I was like, all right. And this is, and these are malleable. This completely is flexible. And that's why when I meet someone new, they could teach me something new. I said on your last podcast, when I worked in Brockton, Massachusetts with young kids, and I always tell everyone, like, they taught me so much as I taught them. And because you were never too old to learn and you were never too young to teach. And that became a definition I lived by, because when I started pursuing what I wanted to in speaking, so many people told me I would never achieve it. So many adults told me I was too young, and I'd have a deep conversation with them and like, wow, I never thought of that. I'm like, so you learned something new from someone young? I thought you said I was too young to pursue this. And you know, at the time, years ago, it came from a prideful standpoint for me, but now it became that definition where if I could learn from a 7-year-old in a session and they taught me something, I learned something new. I'm not going to judge a young person because he's younger. I'm going to be open to what he has to say and then choose, does it fit for me? Do I need to adjust a little bit to be able to view my life through that lens? But when we view our life through other lenses in that sense and grow our perspective of the world, that's unconditional love. Again, what Jesus came back to. And I'm like, all right, the more I started to look at lens through that rather than be attached to one perspective over another, the more I started to feel life begin to grow, we'll say. I know it's deep, but I'll pass it.
No, yeah, I think it drives home this point, that this connection aspect. And like, it brings up even a great concept of like the fracturing of all these different religions and all of them having different pieces of the puzzle that ultimately lead us to where we need to go.
Right.
And it is crazy that like a lot of them, like the religions have similar belief systems.
Yes.
There's different things to every one, but it's like it's very similar. So it's like to not look at other religions and be curious, at least. It's like, well, I agree with him on that. Like, what else do I agree with him on?
Right,
and
exactly.
Like, and see in this exploration aspect, and it becomes difficult with the implementation of belief systems at an early age, where that's driven. This is what we believe. We're right. We're right. And it's that mindset has bled so deep into our culture where it's fractured a lot of these different aspects. I mean, it gets into the political aspect, it gets into a lot of our cultural aspects. And I think we're starting, I think we are trying to put those pieces back together to see people as people and not your enemy.
Yeah.
And that's like a big thing right now, is we're very, like, the culture is very big on villainizing the opposition in whatever form, whether it's religious or political or cultural, where the other side is the enemy, when they're not. Yeah. Like, if you actually ask them and learned what their point of view is on their life and what they're going through, they're good. Like you said, you're going to be more willing to understand. They're going to be more willing to understand your point of view. Yeah. And then you could actually work together to figure out how to make life better for everybody.
Right.
And obviously it's a very, like, big perspective, and it's like we're talking on a general level, but that connective nature is what we need. And right now, I think social media is helping, but also hurting at the same time because it's highlighting the issue.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it's giving us much in the sense of how do we fix it. And maybe this goes into our mind. Maybe this goes back to us where we actually have to be the ones to figure out how to do these things. And
Sure.
I even look at this podcast as like one of those stepping stones where we're bringing back this like primitive aspect of like storytelling to podcast form.
Yeah.
And having those conversations and
Right.
like diving deep on most podcasts, diving deep into like stuff. And I think for as much as people want to joke about, we should put price tags on podcast equipment and all that stuff in the comments, that we should not let everyone get them. I do think it's helping connect people again.
Yep.
And I think that's a positive thing because it goes into this aspect of diving into spirituality and asking questions. And I mean, I've been really big into like, I forget this dude's name. He was on Andrew Schultz's podcast. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Billy Carson?
Yes, Billy Carson.
Dude, I knew exactly what you're connected to.
I am so intrigued by that type of unknown conspiracy history.
I understand that, yep.
Because to me, that could explain a lot of things that are unexplainable when we talk about especially space and possibly what else is out there.
Sure.
And even the way that he talked about Jesus. Like, I actually could really resonate with the way that he was speaking about it because I'm like, okay, he was a real person.
Yes.
But they twist a lot of what's happened is people have twisted what he said to fit their own narratives because we're human.
Right.
And we've taken things and tried to run with them and create narratives and do what we do. But like to go back to hear about him possibly being something more than just human, having these abilities, and that could explain why he has these abilities. And this gets into the whole spiritual aspect of tapping into different senses and belief systems and going into this is getting super deep into that stuff.
I love
it. Hearing that, even if you like disagree with it completely, you're like, no way. Listening to an episode like that and hearing someone speak about something completely foreign to you allows you to do some new research and question your own beliefs. And this goes into what we're kind of talking about.
Yeah, no, oh my God. I love everything you're saying because so Billy Carson, I don't know how I stumbled across his stuff, but I did years ago. His perspectives, exactly what you're saying, it opened me up to where I was like, all right, I'm intrigued now.
That makes a lot of sense, honestly, with what you've been talking about.
Yeah, and so it's like the books that I mentioned where the Bible was altered and scriptures were removed. You can go buy these at the store. You can go Barnes and Noble and buy these. And you can go to the library and buy the Apocrypha texts where all the Bible books of the Bible are removed. So I had to do my research. I'm like, all right, why? And then I learned when it was altered and everything like this. But then I went to different pastors and I asked questions because I'm like, all right, why are these books removed? And it wasn't that they had nothing important to say. If you really dive into these, like the Gospel of Thomas that Billy Carson goes deep into, but people can read this right now, and literally Jesus teaches you how to manifest because there is a scripture that is in the Gospel of Matthew that teaches you how to pray. That's in every single Bible. In the Gospel of Thomas, that scripture is in full. What we have now published today is missing half of the paragraph on how to pray. And so when I sat there, I go, I want to learn. Not because I think this is right or wrong. I want to see what else Jesus had to say. Or Yeshua ben Joseph, whatever people want to use. When he spoke that, it was written down. Like people wrote it down. And so I want to know. But because it was taken out of the Bible, was because when they were collecting all of the text that we now mass produce, they chose the books of the Bible that had multiple sources. Completely understandable. There's no ill will towards that. Because if the Gospel of Matthew, they found 300 versions of it that literally all line up, yeah, we're going to put that in. The Gospel of Thomas, maybe they found 5. Well, 300 that all said the same thing, and then this one only had 5. They could have been destroyed or whatever. But when they built it, that we now mass produce, it's because they had multiple sources. So it was all lined up. Completely fine. Like, seriously, I want people to listen right now where you're getting, like this topic causes, like, shivers down people's spines because it's stepping on what your belief systems are, much like we touched on with I do in my workshops. It's like you have a moment to yourself to make a choice point. Do I want to keep believing this? Or do I want to see? I'm intrigued. So when I became intrigued by Billy Carson, I started to look into these texts. I highly recommend this to anyone trying to grow spiritually, the Gospel of the Holy 12. This was a version of the Bible as is described, where the disciple John was on his deathbed, and God came to him. Jesus came to him, appeared, and said, "I need you to write everything down because the quote unquote correctors of the Bible will come." And so he's on his deathbed. He wrote all this again, and it's like these scriptures are so. When I read this, I felt it in my soul that this is truth. And I was like, I knew. And I asked pastors about it after, and they looked at me like I had 12 heads. I had to go through that. That was a weird feeling of like, hey, I just became unaccepted by these people because I wanted to learn more. All right, it's fine. But if I went to, I'll give this, I love this story because I find it awesome. I went to, he had to be in his late 60s, early 70s, a great pastor. He's from Foxborough. I love the guy. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to grow. So I asked around, and my mom connected me with him, phenomenal guy. And he goes, yeah, I'll meet with him for sure. He's like a 70-year-old man. And I'm sitting in his church, like in the pews, talking to him for like 2 hours. And he goes, all right, Bill, what do you want to talk about? And I went in and I was like, all right. And I just let the floodgates open. And everything that I've learned in this area, I poured it out to him. And he came from a very old school mentality, as you should when you've been doing it for probably 60 years, learning, diving deep into this stuff. So your beliefs are very concrete, understandably so. They're not as flexible because you've lived this for so long. They've been ingrained in you for so long. So I'm bringing all these new perspectives to him. And at first he was very defensive, understandably so, but I talked to him for 2 hours. So you see the defense walls start to come down. So then I start to dive into these different scriptures and what was talked about and how we had different beliefs on what the scriptures meant and everything, as you should. I think if we think that one scripture means one thing, what I believe about how all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord could be completely different than what you think, because you have a different viewpoint of life because you've lived different experiences. I have lived different experiences than you. When I say that, Romans 8:28, I sit there and like, I can see certain experiences in my life where, yes, all things work together and help me, because as much as I went through so much pain, it opened me up to dive deeper, which helped me now to where I'm at. So everything works together. That's my belief. Someone listening right now that may have never heard that, might be going struggles and might look at the world through a negative perspective. No, how could this help me? I have no understanding. Like, completely fine. But when I talked to him and I started to bring all these things up, we went deep, and he appreciated, I appreciated everything. The last thing he said to me was, Bill, I'm not going to lie to you. You have a lot of deep beliefs, and they're intrinsic beliefs, and they're going to shake a lot of people up. I go, yeah, no, I agree. And I said that with a smile. And then he paused and he goes, yeah, but I know one man that did that 2,000 years ago, and we still talk about him today. And I sat there, I go, oh, that was the greatest comment I could ever get, because he's comparing me in that moment to Jesus. Because Jesus came 2,000 years ago with beliefs that people didn't like, and he's kept going and followed his heart, followed the faith, followed where God was leading him, and changed people's lives. So when I brought that to him and he compared that to me, I was like, all right. To me, that was God giving me a thumbs up, where it's like, you're on the right path. Because these new areas, if we want life to continue to be the same, we can keep doing the same stuff. But if we're now discovering, as Billy Carson said, we're discovering new evidence that adds to scripture, new evidence that adds to consciousness, new evidence that adds to our spiritual beliefs and our spiritual growth, and we're afraid to step into it, you're living in faith. You're living in fear, you're not living in faith. And so when I sat there, like, all right, and when I first came across this, when I first started meditating, I was told for so long that meditation was the worst thing you could do, because other cultures talked about it, Christianity didn't talk about it. Even though Jesus says meditate on the word. I sat there, and so I went through pain. I went through life experiences that hurt me so much. I was shattered. And then all of these, I know for a fact it was God to help me out. All these messages kept coming to me about meditation and studying it in deeper areas of this. And I was like, I felt a pull in my heart. I was like, you have to step into this area. And I started meditating. And I started learning it, at first very shaky. As people listen right now, you might feel in your heart, like, I don't know what to do right now with this conversation. Follow it. And if you feel nope, I don't want any of this, that's fine. But to step into a new area and step out of your comfort zone to what you've always believed will help you elevate and grow. So when I stepped into meditation, it was a whole new area, but oh my goodness, I should have been doing it for years. It helped me out. It connected me to God on a deeper level. It connected me to my highest self, to where now that leads me. And so I even got messages the other day when I was meditating in such a phenomenal way to help me in what I was going through in the moment. And I sat there, I felt so much peace. And Jesus talks, there's a reason why Jesus went to the wilderness by himself so many times in the Bible, to meditate, to sit with God, to sit. And that's what meditation is. You find, I said in your last podcast, you find the presence, God, in the present. So when the Bible constantly messages the presence with a capital P, you find the presence in the present moment, because God's in the now. He'll always, he sits outside of time. God says that people don't want to use he or whatever. God sits outside of time. So if he's with us in every single moment because he's omnipresent, which he is, we sit there and we're like, all right, if he's always in the now moment, us as humans only have the now moment. The future can be what it will. The past was what it was, but I can be here in this moment and change what I want the future to be. And so when I sit there and I found that in myself, meditation was how you come back to the present moments and then can step further into what you're called to do. Because now your higher self is helping, but you're aligned to God. And when you're aligned to God, you have all the power to do what you set your mind to, your intention for life. That's why you set your intention in meditation, and then you receive direction. And that's literally what all the scriptures talked about. It's what all these scriptures that were removed talked about just as much. So when we come back to these areas and we're open to it, and we trust that we are constantly protected. And I'm going to say that to people, because when I talk about these topics, people are like, I don't know, because we believed for so long in one area. It's in every scripture. We are always protected. So for people listeners now, and you're like, I don't know about this, know that you have a constant protection over you. You've constantly loved. There's nothing that can harm you. So to step into those areas, that became my grounding foundation of belief. I can step into this, and when I feel I'm going too far, meaning God telling me, hey, pull back, I'm going to pull back. But in the areas that I at least stepped into, I knew what my line was. I kept going, and I was like, that's a little too far. I pulled back. Could I always go further and dive even deeper? Of course. But I knew the limits God had for me in learning what I did. So in these scriptures that Billy Carson came across and studied and whatnot, I was like, I need to make my own decision on that. And that's what a podcast does. You hear something new, it intrigues you, and then you make a question about yourself. It's a choice point. Do I want to add this to my belief, or am I not going to take this? That's everything in life. If we connect it back to what I started on with your belief systems, if you make your choices about the world from 0 to 7, and you don't change those beliefs, you could live in fear, you can live in whatever for the rest of your life. But experiences happen to adjust you, to shape you into who you were meant to be, so your beliefs change. That's the goal of life, to make you achieve this higher self, this higher version of you, to who you were called to be and who you're meant to be. I believe this is in the Bible. This is in all these different cultures. It's very deep into so many of them. But I believe, and it was talked about in the Bible and the Gospel of the Holy 12, that prior to coming to this life, you're talking with God. You're choosing your life path. That's in so many cultures. And I sat there, I go, so that means that before I was here, I chose the experiences I wanted to have. I chose my destiny. I chose my dream. You forever can change that at any moment. But life wants to bring you on this path. So when we step into something that is in line with that purpose, we feel the passion. We feel joy, we feel love, these higher level emotions. Emotion is your energy in motion. It's connected to your spirit. So if I start to move forward towards what I'm most passionate about and I feel good about it, that's the path I was always called to be on. And if I'm moving forward on a path that I feel just sucks, so much stress and tension here, depressed, anxious, angry about this path I'm on, I don't want to be here anymore, I believe that's either one, trying to get you to where you're meant to be, but I think it's trying to get you to choose to change the path so you can become more aligned to the path you're supposed to be on. And that's what all these scriptures, all these different cultures have been teaching. But because we look at life through that lens of my room and this is only the way I want to see things, rather than stepping outside that house and seeing the universe for all it is, I want to be open to what other people have to say, because it's going to teach me more about what I need to learn for my specific life here. That's why podcasts like this can impact someone's belief system, which opens them up to possibly the greatest growth they could ever have, which is their higher self, their spiritual growth, which is all we're called to do. You know, that's what life is all about. Loving experiences, painful experiences, everything in between, they're all growing you. The beauty of life.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad that we got into this, because I've definitely noticed between our last podcast, and obviously I don't know when the Billy Carson stuff really entered into your life. I don't know if it was like recent or like before.
I was probably studying at the last podcast.
Because I definitely noticed between our podcast, hearing you on Low Gravity's podcast, the introduction of like stuff like this a little bit more. Yeah. And at least influencing, not like your faith, because obviously your faith is your faith, but like the possibility of this added stuff here. Right. And that added stuff has always resonated with me. And I've heard it in different ways. I've heard it through different people, different podcasts, different formats. But like this concept, because like I was raised on just religion and different morals and beliefs, and I've gone away from it just on my own path. Good for you. But I've never hated it either, because I wasn't forced to like believe into it. Yeah. But a lot of it resonated with me. That's why I still, a lot of my foundational morals still align with that. Yeah. And that's why I speak on that, because a lot of these religions teach good things, and we just pick out the things we don't like, and then with our current culture, society amplifies that, and we just like, these are bad. Why do we still believe this? It's 2024. It's like, you're picking out stuff that's a little too nitpicky. For sure. Let's pick out the stuff that's actually going to benefit our lives here and like actually help treat people. There's obviously some things that people might get more animated about than others, but I think with stuff like Billy Carson, I'm very interested in stuff like that, or Graham Hancock, or like ancient civilizations that we've lost, or the possibility that there was advanced life before us and we're missing pieces. Exactly. And like the human life, we're 100 years if we're lucky. Right. Like how many lives could have been lived before we were even here, before Jesus, before any of this? Like we really don't know until we start looking into it. Like Earth has been constantly changing. 100%. And for people to just be so close-minded to the possibility of something coming in and changing their belief system is crazy, because tying it all the way back to the beginning is changing our thoughts and our actions and belief systems to grow. Yeah. We're continuing to grow and amplify our mind and improve our mind and use our mind to question things. If things are a little bit off, why is it this way? Could it be better? Right. And I think that's the point. We're trying to be better people. Exactly. And I think what we've touched on here has been fantastic. We're getting towards like the back end of this podcast. We could do a whole another two podcasts.
Let me add this then.
I was going to pass it to you for any last thoughts.
Yeah, let me add this on that spiritual topic before we close the thing out. So you mentioned your background. You grew up in religion, everything like this, and then you made a choice point along the way where it's like, all right, like I still believe a lot of this, but you had to take a step back and you started to look at it from a deeper lens. I teach, there's a video on my YouTube channel people can go look at. It's called Religiosity versus Spirituality. Religion is the vehicle used to get you to spirituality. That's why there's different rooms in that house, to get you to spirituality is seeing the universe for all that it is. Religion is the viewpoint, the vehicle to get you to that window, so you can start to see it. So when we step out of religiosity, meaning rules, rituals, sets of beliefs that are meant to grow us to a point where we can step out of them, we reach spirituality. We were called to be in spirituality, which is higher consciousness, which is Christ consciousness for people listening. And if you dive deep into what Christ consciousness is, it's you elevating yourself. And some cultures believe that Jesus comes back. Some people believe Christ consciousness in us is Jesus coming back, because we start to see life through his level. And when we elevate ourselves on a spiritual level to a very deep, higher level, you achieve Christ consciousness, which the Bible teaches. And when you are able to get there, you start to see life for all that you are and the power you stand in. And you start to see life for all that it is. And that's what Jesus came to teach us. And that's why there's different viewpoints here. And I don't say that to people to adjust them. But the last piece I want to say is, I've taught on this before. I've taught to different audiences, taught on YouTube. The Sunday's video is literally about this. We have attachments in life. We have moments where we detach from life, and there's non-attachments. And I think the most powerful thing I've ever learned in my entire life when I was going through the most pain was non-attachments. But when we become so attached to how we think life should go, and if it changes, if I'm so attached, I can't live without this. When that goes, I'm shattered. I don't know what to do anymore. So when we are so attached to our current belief system that if someone else says something else and we become so upset, we become so emotional about it, whether good or bad or whatever, that means that I'm unwilling to add new in. I'm not able to see things from a higher perspective. I'm not seeing things from a different perspective because I'm so attached. So that's one area we detached from life. So when I was going through pain, I can give you an example. When I was going through a breakup, life sucked. I was shattered. As normal for human beings. I just stayed in my room all the time. I'd go to work. I'd go to the gym. I'd come home. I'd eat. I'd go to my room. Same routine always. I would never go out. I was lost. I was meant to dive deeper into myself. That's the goal of having time to yourself, and ending relationships does that. That's personal growth time, which is great, and it was the greatest blessing ever. But I detached myself from the world because something in my life left, so I stayed in my room. And I thought it was healthy. I thought it was healing. Time went by. But since I detached myself from life, I wasn't living life. I wouldn't go out with my friends. I wouldn't go have experiences. So I was missing out on life. So you have attachment, which means I can't live without this. If this is gone, I don't know what I'm going to do. Detachment, where something leaves, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Meaning I'm not going to live life anymore. I'm annoyed. I'm upset. Whatever it is. That's what happens when we go into pain. But then you have non-attachment. Meaning if it comes, I let it. If it goes, I let it. And when I learned that after pain and everything, I went through meditation, everything, I understood that. That's the level we were supposed to always live in. Meaning if it comes, I let it. If it goes, I let it. So if I hear new perspectives, if I hear new beliefs, if I hear new love, I look at it through an unconditional love lens, which is exactly what I said earlier is what we were called to do. So when I sit there and I could pray on something and it comes in, I could manifest something and it comes in. I'm so happy about it. I'm loving it. It's helped me so much, everything like that. And then I'm enjoying it and then it goes away. That's okay. I'm happy it was there. And then I know something good is always around the corner. So I start to live life from a peaceful perspective and a trusting perspective that life always has my back, the universe has my back, God has my back, and a faithful perspective. And that's very tough for people to live in is non-attachment. Because to say if it comes, I let it, if it goes, I let it is terrifying to people. But when you realize that's the next level of spiritual growth, oh my goodness, you elevate for sure, but you don't become attached where if I miss something or I lose something, it's okay. You realize, you look at it from this higher lens. You see how your life's improving. Like, okay, this was supposed to happen. If all things really do work together for the good of those that love, Romans 8:28, that's okay. This was supposed to, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. If it comes, I let it. If it goes, I let it. I live in a state of peace, no longer attached to where I might run into anger or run into depression because something's missing. No, I'm good right here. And that allows you to stay in the present moment where you find the presence. So that's just something I wanted to end on because it adds to this whole belief system where if we're so attached to our belief systems, we might miss the bus that goes by. It's like, oh no, I wanted you to be attached to this so it would get you here. And then when you let go of that attachment, now you're at a higher level. So it would get you here. And then you grow. But if you're not attached, all right, I'm going to follow this road. Okay, cool. I'm going to follow this road. Okay, cool. I'm going to follow this road. And you start to grow at an exponential level because life is guiding you to where you're meant to be. You're not trying to force it one way or the other through attachments. And I sat there, I go, oh my goodness, that's how we're supposed to live. Because it's literally across different scriptures, across the Bible, everything. It's what Jesus came to teach us. And I'm like, all right, well, when I hear new belief systems, exactly as we said with Billy Carson, it intrigues us. I want to step into it, but we know our levels. We know when we're getting too far. I fried my brain learning this stuff. And I'm like, all right, I got to stop, because I had to process it. That's everything. But it's just a beautiful concept that I love to show people. So I wanted to end with it on that aspect.
Yeah, I think that's actually the perfect place to wrap the podcast because I totally agree with that. Learning the non-attachment way of living is the way to live.
For sure.
It's just being grateful for things that come
Yep.
and being grateful for things that go. It's just understanding that when things go, things do come to replace it and knowing that it's going to be something good. Yeah. It's something that's serving you in your highest purpose. Yep. And I think that's the perfect way to wrap it up for building from what you've been up to to recapping the thoughts, the words, the actions, diving into spirituality some more and talking about some new belief systems, entering in and when it's too far, when it's good to add some stuff, questioning things, wrapping up all the way to not being having non-attachment to things.
Yeah.
I think that ties perfectly. And again, Billy, every time having you on the podcast is such a blessing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we let it roll. And it's
Yeah.
one of the longer ones that I've done. And I love when we dive into stuff. It's just
For sure.
super fantastic. If you want, look into this camera, plug your stuff.
For sure. Guys, I thank you for listening. Like I said, I love these, dude. If they go 3 hours, they go 3 hours, But guys, you can find me YouTube once a week with Billy G. Every single Sunday for the past 435 straight Sundays. We've brought a message to help you, to guide you, and to teach you in these deeper concepts. Whether it's an interview with a guest, we've had Jared on just as much. We're helping you through these interviews, through these deeper messages, whether it's me teaching or whatever it is, to help you grow yourself. So once a week with Billy G, please subscribe on YouTube. You can find me, BillyGLifeCoaching.com, where you can see everything for life coaching, everything for speaking, where if you heard something in this message today that sparked you and you want to learn more, reach out. If there's a perspective on here that you yourself have been thinking on but don't really know where to step into, reach out. Or if you want to talk about life coaching, you can set up a free strategy session with me right on my website, dive on my calendar, and I'll be right there for you. And we can dive into the areas that you feel you are meant to grow in and want to grow in yourself and achieve these goals and dreams. And we're going to talk about it. So guys, let's dive into it. I want to help you. Head to BillyGLifeCoaching.com. I'll be right there for you. And then find me on Instagram at BillyGLudis. But on that, brother, I thank you for being here.
Perfect. Right. And perfect plugs. I'll tag you in everything per usual. And again, thank you. Look forward to future podcasts.
Yeah, right. I can't wait for the next one.
For you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. Check it out, the Carroll Connection, .simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you like to watch our podcast, go on YouTube, search the Carroll Connection, or at Jared M. Carroll, and it should pop up for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll, at the Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So, until next time, guys, peace.
I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it back there. Yeah, I got game, got in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it Turnpike Miles. Yeah, it's Boo signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock.